This is an honor for me to see so many of you. My name is Mariana. I am a member of the Media Fair Trade Committee. Our committee has been working together since the year 2006, when Media, a municipality outside the city of Philadelphia, became the first fair trade town of the United States. At that moment, we joined an international movement of people that believe in a more equitable trading system, so that farmers and workers in producing countries can be paid better and improve the qualities of their lives. I am indeed myself from a producing country. I am originally from Argentina, and I guess that makes me more aware of the value and the importance of a movement like fair trade. And when I moved to Media in the year 2011, I got engaged right away. I fell in love with the movement and I started to volunteer with the committee. And along with my fellow members of the committee that are all behind the scenes, you can wave, we started to help other schools, universities, and towns to become fair trade as well. So in order to become fair trade, a town or a school or a university needs to meet certain requirements, which include educating the community and spreading the word about fair trade. And that is what we're doing here today. We are gathered here to hear and to learn from an amazing fair trade advocate who is indeed a lot more than that. I actually met Ben at a national fair trade conference in the year 2014, I think it was, along with Elizabeth, who is our tech person today. I was so nervous. It was my first time attending a national conference, and not being a native speaker was a little intimidating. So Elizabeth and I approached someone who seemed young and started to talk to him. It was the first dinner, and we found this person so sweet, so fun, and so well-spoken, and so knowledgeable about fair trade that it was amazing. And I remember thinking that night, this kid is gonna go far. And far he did go. Now, fast forward to the year 2020, I moved back to the United States after living several years in my home country in Argentina. And what do I discover upon return? Well, this young guy had founded a fair trade company, was featured in the Forbes magazine, earned several grants, scholarships, and awards. And his is the first brand to feature the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce seal on a packaged good product. So without further delay, let me introduce you to our dear friend, Ben Conard from Long Island, New York. Ben, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Mariana. Oh my gosh, you are making me blush over here with that introduction. And it's bringing back some really good memories from, I think you're right, I think it was 2014, which feels like forever ago now.
I know.
But both you and Elizabeth, I remember, were just such guiding lights in the movement of all fair trade campaigns from universities and towns and congregations and schools. So really just so grateful to have such a supportive community. I was also really nervous, Mariana. I was, just a young student who wanted to start a university campaign on my campus, and just was so grateful to fall into a community of such awesome support. So, and I know all of you here, the 100+ of you watching now and joining in, are also those really passionate advocates who care about making positive changes in the world. So this is a special place to be. And I'm really happy and grateful to be here. I have a really kind of a short and casual presentation that I'm going to share with you guys because I'm a visual learner, so I wanted to share some visuals as well. But really, I'm hoping that we can keep this casual and informal and conversational. So please, please feel free to share in the chat any comments, reactions, reflections, and of course, questions that you have about the movement, about fair trade. If I can help and support in some way, I'm going to, and I would love to. So I hope that I can. I am going to share my screen. This is like the classic statement of 2020 and 2021 is I'm going to share my screen. And let's see if I do this right, because there's a bunch of different ways. First, you have to present sometimes, and then you have to, let's see if I can do this.
While you're doing that, I'm so sorry. We learned the hard way that we're limited to 100 members coming in to watch our presentation today. So lots of people are trying to get in, but they can't get in.
What a good problem to have.
So we might have to do this again.
Yes, with the other 100.
Right.
Can you guys see just the title screen, or do you also see kind of my notes?
We see the next slide too.
Okay, yeah.
So maybe you should do a bigger screen, like a full screen, right?
Oh wait, here we go.
And we are recording the event, so those of the people who cannot join right now,
How about that? Did that work?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, again, I can't see the chat, but I do hope that it's active, and I hope that everyone here will kind of keep throwing in their questions and their comments. But ultimately, I think this is, a little bit different of a group than I'm used to speaking to when I'm speaking in general about fair trade, because usually I feel like I'm, educating someone about fair trade or teaching them about what fair trade even is. But I feel like so many of you joining today already have a really good understanding of fair trade and are already advocates in your own right. So I really wanted to start with a story that is a really kind of profound part and moment in my time as a fair trade advocate. And that was a visit that I took to Ecuador in 2017, actually with fair trade campaigns. And we traveled to a number of different cacao farmers, tea farmers, flower farmers all across the country. And in particular, one of the cacao farms that we visited, we had a lot of time to ask our questions and to learn about the story of the farmers there. And kind of a really important and grounding moment for me that I want to share with you all as advocates was the answer to a question that I asked this farmer here. And I asked them, what is, the one thing that you want people on the other end of the supply chain to know about the chocolate that they're consuming? Because this is really the origin of the supply chain. What is it that they want someone all the way at the other end, where the finished product is, what do you want them to actually know about cacao? And this is what they said. We put our whole lives into cacao. We want the consumer to know that when they eat chocolate. And I just thought that this was a really kind of moving piece behind all ingredients and things that are produced and things that are sourced into our country and onto our plates, was really knowing that like people's full livelihood is dependent upon certain ingredients and things that we often take for granted and consume every day as a luxury. So just to ground you all as advocates, I want you to remember that the farmers out there, that is the number one thing that they often want people to realize on the other end, is that there are so many lives and livelihoods behind the things that we're eating and taking for granted every day. And I just thought that was really important. The other piece that I really came to understand during my journey and travels visiting fair trade producers was that fair trade is really a way of respecting those producers. It's a way of showing that you care what's happening between the origin point and the time that it gets to your plate or in your hands, or maybe it's something that you're wearing. And in many cases, I met so many female farmers and female producers. And this was really special too, because I think, oftentimes in our own country and in the developing world, we see a lot of female workers and the female workforce not being respected fairly. And fair trade is a way to do just that. The picture that you see on the left there is a cacao farm run by 4 generations of women. So in that one photo, there are 4 generations of women being represented. And it was just so incredible to see, like, really just such a history of investment in this thing, cacao, this fruit, that makes them who they are. These farms were like literally their backyards. They lived on the farm and in the farm. So just kind of remembering that fair trade is really a way to respect those farmers. And I think when I share that message with my fellow consumers and with people around the world, that's something that I really try to highlight, is that fair trade is really a way of respecting these people on the ground. This is, I think, also a great quote to help advocates realize what the purpose of fair trade really is. You know, these days we can find quality products anywhere, and we have them at our fingertips, and we can have them delivered at our door in less than 2 hours in some cases and in some cities. But it's not enough just looking for quality products. It's not enough just finding the best of the best. But now we really need to ensure that quality goes beyond the product itself, and it actually goes into the process and into the lives of the people who are making them. And I think that is just so paramount to what fair trade is trying to correct and help. So to give you guys a little bit of a history on me and where I started my fair trade journey, I went to a small public liberal arts college in Western New York called SUNY Geneseo. And it was here that I actually started a fair trade club and started a fair trade campaign. It was here that I found the organization Fair Trade Campaigns to help me do just that. And I worked with tons of students, worked with our faculty and dining services to encourage them to change the way that they were not only sourcing products on campus, but also teaching our students about supply chains and workers around the world. And it was a really special experience, I think, as a college student, to be able to actually make changes on campus and help educate my fellow students on something that I found to be really important. The perhaps funniest and best learning that I had from my time as a student advocate was my experience as a juggler. And you might be laughing to yourself now, asking, like, what the heck could juggling have to do with fair trade, or what the heck could juggling have to do with advocacy? And I would argue that it has a lot to do with advocacy and potentially even fair trade. So the first club that I joined, before I started the Fair Trade Club on campus, the first club that I joined was actually our circus club. And it was there that I learned how to juggle. It was there that I learned the benefits of juggling. And it is a funny thing. It is, an act of a clown. But the thing that I found even more special about juggling was that it was able to really capture the attention of an audience, and it was really able to captivate people. And when you're sharing a message, when you're advocating for a change in your society, that's something you need to be able to do. You need to be able to captivate your audience and attract some level of attention to that. So I used juggling, something kind of silly and a unique skill, to do just that. The photo on the right is me juggling pints of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. And I did this all around campus and in our residence halls to really get people to stop and look and think, but then also question, like, why the heck is this kid holding 3 pints of ice cream on a unicycle, and why should I pay attention to that? So I guess my lesson here is really to use a tactic that gets attention and then share the importance behind it. And sometimes that's what we as advocates have to do, to share a message and to get people to listen to that message. So don't be afraid to be unique and change it up and be different, because people will pay attention to that. They'll get some entertainment out of it, and then hopefully you can teach them something valuable as well. Also, during my college experience, I really took advantage of being a student who had, resources on a campus and a great college community to support me in doing what I was doing. So I gave a TEDx speech at my campus on fair trade and to my fellow students. It was, I think, being a student, and I think I'm speaking to a lot of students. I would actually love if you guys write in the chat, if you're a student, give a thumbs up or say, yes, I'm a student. Students have, I think, just such an array of resources and people to help guide them on their journey of figuring out what they want to do with their life. And one of those things is potentially being an advocate. So as a student, I made sure that I used all the resources around me, all the people who really are supporting your journey as a learner, growing into becoming a contributing adult in the world. And if you use that to your advantage, you'll be able to experience all different things. And that's really, I used college and being a student as a safety net for doing just that. So don't be afraid to look for your safety net, even outside of college, for exploring and learning new things. I even, during my time in college, I went to India. It was not a college related program, but I was working for a block printing company who was producing table linens with a fair trade artisan group in India. And I remember I actually wrote all 5 or 6 of my professors that semester, and I asked them if I could take like the 10 days off from class to go visit fair trade artisan producer groups in India. And I remember really, I needed to kind of argue the point of why I was going to miss class and how I was going to make up for it. And the way that I made up for it was reporting back, whether it was my marketing class or my supply chain analysis class, or maybe it was my finance class. I reported back specifically on what I learned at that trip that related to that class. And then I presented about it to my fellow students in that class. So I would say a recommendation to all students is don't be afraid to really think outside the box with what an education means to you. And don't be afraid to argue that point to your professors, to really have them help you in that learning journey. And I'm so grateful that I had the experience in college to do something like that, because it just helped me realize there's a whole world out there waiting to be explored. Sometimes it directly relates to your course and your class, and sometimes it indirectly relates. So make sure that you connect them yourself. Sometimes you're responsible to do that. So I'll also share with you guys a little bit about my kind of entrepreneurial journey. This product that I created and this brand that I founded a few years ago, actually as a college student. Happy to field any kind of more specific questions that come up about my journey as an entrepreneur. But in the meantime, I thought I would call this a love story in the spirit of Valentine's Day and in the spirit of the fact that most of us have some kind of emotional connection to chocolate. So just a small background on who we are as a brand and as a company. I really did found this company on the basis of being fair trade and wanting to support farmers. But the reason that we called our brand 5 North was because 5 degrees north of the equator is where West Africa lies. And West Africa, at least the 2 countries, Ghana and Ivory Coast, produce 2/3 of the world's cacao. And I thought this was huge because oftentimes when you ask the average consumer where they think chocolate comes from, they'll often say it's a factory in Belgium. And that, I know it's pretty laughable, but
Right.
that is just so far from the truth. Cacao is a fruit that grows on a tree. You saw it with the farmer in the first image. And I actually, have a cacao pod here that I'll usually show people and let them hold. This is a dried cacao pod for them to realize, like, oh, this is, a product that's farmed. It's not produced chemically in a factory. And it takes real human beings to create that product. And I think that reminder is really powerful for consumers to realize that not only their cacao is a fruit that grows on a tree thousands of miles away, but so is the cotton that their t-shirt is made of. And so is the honey that's sitting in the jar in their kitchen. And so is, the sugar that's in their cupboard. So many things are grown and produced by hands that we don't see happening thousands of miles away. And that is really why fair trade is important. Also at 5 North, we're really focused on well-being. All of the ingredients are good for you, very simple and clean ingredient label. And as Mariana mentioned, diversity too. So this was an initiative that we took about 2 years ago. When we produced our new package, we decided to stamp a seal on it, showing off that we're a certified LGBT business enterprise. And this was actually a really great lesson, I think, that transferred from my experience in the fair trade world. Fair trade certification is a seal that gets stamped on a package. And it's an indication to a consumer at the shelf and a potential customer that they're making a positive choice. And I wanted to take that lesson with the consumer and transfer that to another type of seal, kind of a social or moral direction. So I think there's a lot there's a lot to be said for the interest that a consumer has at the shelf for looking for more direction and more help in making better decisions. And that's exactly what fair trade does. So really, our product it's plant-based. We also, we knew that we had to create a delicious product. That was like the number one focus on the brand, because people won't consume and buy it again unless it's absolutely delicious. But we also wanted to make something that was plant-based, so doesn't use any dairy, something that was bite-sized and fun to eat. So those little cubes are actually a custom size mold that we created. It's the perfect bite-sized piece. 72% cacao. So really the brand is focused on cacao. The brand is focused on this fruit. And that's the first ingredient in all of the chocolate. And then every flavor that we make is also some form of a superfood. So we have like raw pistachios, raw almonds and cinnamon, dried goji berries. These are things that people associate with health, things that people try to consume more of. And in addition to cacao, that was kind of our way of doing that. People will often look at this product or my entrepreneurial journey and think that it was, all kind of fun and positive and bright and cheery. But I'm here to tell you that it was a journey that did not come without challenges. And I think it's important to recognize those challenges, especially I'm sure so many of you students out there are aspiring entrepreneurs, and I'm so happy for that and excited to watch your journey bloom. But to realize that the challenges that lie ahead are very real, but not impossible to get through. Some of the early challenges came in a commercial kitchen where I was producing everything by hand. And these were very late nights. I'm smiling here, but probably only because there was a camera there. This is like probably midnight or 2 a.m. And then, of course, there are so many times where things get mislabeled or labeled incorrectly. So I had to fix or change those in some way. And so much of this is just done by hand. So this morning, actually, we sent out on behalf of Facebook, of all organizations, they wanted to order, they were really looking to order fair trade and good products. So they ordered coffee and chocolate. And from us, they ordered chocolate. And these were rushed orders that had to get out before Valentine's Day. So I spent like 3 hours super early this morning packing like 1,200 bags of chocolate, so like 300 pounds of chocolate, and just carrying them to the post office. So sometimes it takes just a lot of physical effort to accomplish a goal. And I want you to really just be reminded of the fact that these hurdles will come, but they're not impossible to get through. So something that I would like to leave you guys with, because I often get this question about like, okay, so fair trade's great. We're looking for more fair trade products. This is something that we care about. Where do we start? Where do we initiate this change? How do we increase the demand for or the production of fair trade products? And whenever I'm asked this, I don't have a definitive answer. So I'm actually I would love to hear all of your thoughts in the chat too, where you really think that this pressure should lie. But I always think that change needs to come from one of or all three of the following places. And I call them the 3 C's. Conveniently, they all start with a C. But the first one, and maybe the most obvious, would be a country. So like, where and how are those labor laws being written to protect people on the ground? That would be, if they could be written properly and enforced completely, that would be a cure-all to kind of all the problems that we see in the world of supply chains. The next potential C where change could start is through companies and brands who actually create and source products. If these companies were willing to source things in a good way, then we wouldn't have reason to worry, or we wouldn't have to question kind of the products that end up on the shelves in front of us. So that's another place that change could start. The third is from consumers. If consumers were the ones to demand that products be made a certain way, or if consumers were to only ever buy products that were made a certain way, then we would see companies start to shift the way that they source products and what they provide to a consumer. So, you know, in a sense, I think I've leaned always toward the consumer as potentially the best starting point. The great thing about fair trade is it gives the power to the consumer, and it gives kind of the tool to the company to make those changes. So I think it might be a multi stakeholder effort. And if I were to add a fourth C, I would say it's all of you. You know, everyone here who is a campaigner, everyone here who is an advocate is pushing for the previous three C's to shift in some way. You know, we're always advocating for safer and better labor laws for producers. We're advocating that companies choose to source more parts of their supply chain as fair trade and to certify them. And of course, we are campaigning for consumers to go out and make those educated decisions at the shelf, and for us to actually educate them along the way. So I don't have a final answer on which C is most important, but I am sure as heck really glad that all of you campaigners, the fourth C, are working to change the other three and to shift the other three. So with that said, thanks for listening. I hope that you guys have been throwing, I'm going to actually end my slideshow. I hope that you guys have been throwing a lot of questions, into the chat. And I'm happy to answer anything I can about the journey, about fair trade, about 5 North, about my student experience, or anything. But yeah, I feel like I've just been talking. So I'd love to hear from someone else. And if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask their question, maybe we can do like the raise hand feature to keep it orderly, if we have that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great, Ben.
And let me start just with what you've missed so far in the chat, Ben.
Sure.
Julie Stanton wrote that her nephew's an alma mater, or a senior at your alma mater, and he sends the message, Emmeline stands proud.
Oh my gosh, that makes me so happy. That is our bear on Main Street. So yes, I know exactly what they're talking about, and thank you for sharing that. I just love to hear that. It's a small school, so when there's a connection there, that's really special.
And Laura Nemec Osborne, who's just this awesome fair trade advocate at Pencrest High School in Media, writes that she's shown your TED Talk to her students.
Oh, thank you so much.
Know that.
That's both embarrassing and endearing. I'm so glad to hear it.
And lastly, your chocolate is coming to Earth and State in Media, so we can all purchase it there very soon.
That's wonderful. I actually shipped that order out personally, so I'm sorry it didn't arrive there as quickly as we'd hoped, but it'll be there soon.
Great. And our mail's all messed up here, so.
I know. Over here too, so. Okay.
And then somebody is, Professor Pablo Zoya, is professor at Brandywine State University, Penn State Brandywine campus. She's asking, where do you source cocoa for 5 North? Which country? And if you have been there?
Great question. Unfortunately, I haven't been there, which is really sad, but we're a startup, so it's kind of hard to do that. Luckily, I have visited cacao farmers in general in Ecuador, so I'm really thankful for that, having had that opportunity. We actually source from 2 regions, both Latin America and West Africa. In the chocolate world, single origin is a really cool buzzword. But sometimes in reality, sourcing from 2 places helps kind of equalize your supply chain, and also creates a real balance in the chocolate flavor. So most will say that West African cacao is kind of very dark and a little bit more bitter in flavor, whereas Latin American cacao is kind of fruitier and lighter in flavor. So when you're able to mix the both, I think it gives a really nice balance to the flavors. So there's argument for both ways, but that's what we do. Thanks, Mariana.
Okay, and so my follow-up question, that was my question, is how did you choose those particular like farms, I guess? How did you find them?
Great question, Zoya. So we actually became members with Fairtrade USA before finding the farmers. So we used Fairtrade USA's farmer network essentially to be able to source through them and their partners first. So again, since we're so small, it was easier for us to find a supply chain that was already in place, already certified, and source directly from there. So it's not as romantic of a story of being able to say that we found a certain farm that we wanted to work with. But for us as a small startup, it was the best way we could do it. Thanks for your question.
There are a bunch of questions for you in the chat.
Okay. Should I be looking at these?
Yeah.
I just don't know how. I don't want to ask the most recent one. I want to ask the one that came before that.
Okay.
And we can read a few too.
Okay, cool.
And the comments. Here says, well, support local businesses and 5 North. People from media are excited that the chocolate is coming to Earth and State. People in Argentina are looking forward to the chocolate to arrive there too. Somebody's asking, what was your adventure in Germany? And
great question.
Yeah, that is from, I guess from Elizabeth.
Great.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, this was another opportunity that I took kind of as a student who didn't have many roots to hold me back from doing anything different. So I applied for a fellowship in Germany. I had actually started 5 North in the US and then 2 months later took this fellowship. So I actually put things on pause for a year and picked up when I came back. So being flexible is hugely important if you want to kind of experience and try new things. My time in Germany was amazing. I lived with host families, took language training courses and studied at a university. And then I also had the opportunity to work as a market researcher in social innovation. So I learned about social entrepreneurship in Europe specifically, and developing the next generation of young European social entrepreneurs. So that was a really, really cool and kind of eye-opening experience for me, not in the world of chocolate, not in the world of my startup, but just another way for me to learn. Thanks, Elizabeth. Let's see. Is this what you anticipated doing as a career path as a kid, or did you just follow your gut as you got older? I would say more of the latter. Definitely, as a kid, I had no idea what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be, where I wanted to go. I still don't by any means, but definitely just followed my gut. I think when you know that there's something you want to explore, take those first small steps to explore it. And then you'll find out pretty quickly if it's something worth continuing or not. And so always follow your gut. If something's pushing you to go do something, I would argue to just take that first small step and then find out later if you want to go all in or if it was just worth a shot.
That's a good advice.
What's the most rewarding part of your job? That's a great question. I would say, honestly, when people eat our chocolate, like it's what a lucky job I have to like make people's mouths happy when they eat chocolate. I think that's a really special part. So one of the most rewarding things is just sharing that happiness with a physical product, I would say. Happy customers. That's a good rewarding part. Do you know how your farmers have used their fair trade premium? Thanks for your question, Ira. We do know how many of the cacao farmers in the Fairtrade USA network have used the premium. So we don't know specifically maybe how the farmers connected to our supply chain have used it, but we know how farmers are using them. So for example, In the Fairtrade USA certified farms in Ghana, there are farmers who have built a school in their community because the closest school was, so many miles away that kids couldn't even get to or walk to school. So they've literally built a school. Then they started to use their premium to hire teachers. Then they started to use their premium to pay for school lunches. So the really cool thing about the premium is that it's different for every community. And that community can democratically elect how to use that premium. So wherever the need is greatest. I think one of the most recent really cool premium stories came from a flower farm in Latin America, where the farmers used it to build a laundry facility on site at their workplace to alleviate the pressure of doing laundry at home or in their community where the services just were not available enough. So I think the cool thing about the premium is it can come in so many forms. And we're seeing that more and more. There are a lot of really great premium stories in Fairtrade USA's impact report. So I would encourage you to kind of browse that if you're curious about how they're using them in different parts of the world. How did you come up with the name 5 North? What was your marketing plan like in the beginning stages? Thanks, Edward. I would say that we're still in the beginning stages in a lot of ways. But the name 5 North comes from the latitude degree of 5 degrees north of the equator. That's where West Africa is and where a majority of the world's cacao comes from. Cacao actually only grows north and south 10 degrees of the equator. So, we really wanted to kind of pay homage to where cacao comes from and the fruit itself. Marketing plan is really just get out there and share samples with people and things like this. I would say as a startup, there are a lot of ways to kind of just engage the community from the start. What were some of the ways you marketed 5 North when you were just starting? St. Joseph's University is starting our own coffee company. We're happy to take some ideas. That's incredible. Claire, that's really exciting. I'd love to hear more about the coffee initiative. There are actually, so my alma mater actually also started a coffee initiative with some farms in Nicaragua that they visited. So I would actually do a quick Google search maybe of SUNY Geneseo and Nicaraguan coffee. And you might see how they were able to do it as students on our campus. So they actually started serving the coffee on campus. They taught about this program in lectures on campus. So I think if you can get the students behind it, the campus will feel the pressure to follow. So don't be afraid to share this message far and wide, and make sure you get students the ability to order and drink that coffee on campus, because I think that will go a long way in showing just the amount of impact that you can have as a student sourcing something really cool to campus. Have I visited media? Yes. Wait, I have, because I've seen the sign, the first fair trade town sign. I've seen it. I'm trying to think when I was there.
You need a photo with it.
Say again, Mariana?
You need a photo with that sign.
I know. I only have it. I was driving somewhere and I have a picture of it out the window. Is it possible that it was near one of the meetings we did in New Jersey? Is that possible? No. Media is too far away. Okay. I don't know where I saw it then. I'm going to look into that. But yes, I have been to media. I just can't remember quite when, where, or how. Target market for 5 North. So we're definitely a premium chocolate brand, but I would say our focus is on like health conscious consumers and ethical consumers. Rachel says it's so delicious. Thanks, Rachel. Hi, Ben. Do you ever run into fair trade doubters or cynics? If so, what do you say to them? Definitely. And it's interesting you asked this, because I run into doubters both in and outside of the fair trade movement, if that makes sense. Because within the fair trade movement, there are often a lot of arguments about which seals are better, which certification works better, and which ones are more strict and which ones aren't. And what I usually say to that is, I mean, quite honestly, less than 1% of all products on the entire market right now are fair trade. Less than 1%. That's really small. So we got to stick together in some way or another. Any level of incremental change that we can make to increase that 1% number is going to make a big difference. So that's what I say when kind of someone within the movement is arguing about which way it should move. We need to grow it and expand it and open it in some way. When outsiders are arguing about fair trade, I typically find that they just don't know. They just don't know that much about supply chains. They don't know that much about farmers. They just don't know that they're often taken advantage of. So the first rule is to educate them, figure out what they don't know, and try to share what you can and enlighten them in some way. So start with really, I mean, asking them, like, do you know where your t-shirt came from? And chances are, if it's not a fair trade or organic t-shirt, they don't know. Ask them to look on the tag, and when it says Bangladesh, ask them where that is on a map. And if they don't know where Bangladesh is on a map, then they certainly don't know, the conditions in which the producer or factory worker was making that t-shirt has to live with. So I think just asking those right questions from the start is a great way to get people thinking and then realizing, oh, I also play a role in this thing that they call fair trade. Brittany asks, since the chocolate is plant-based and dairy-free, is it 100% vegan? So yes and no. We don't use any animal byproducts in the production of our product at all, but it's produced in a factory that does make milk chocolate. So for that reason, I don't think that we're allowed to say it's like 100% untouched by anything, but we don't use any ingredients that are not plant-based. So for most vegans, that's acceptable. If you have a dairy allergy, that's a different question because there could be a trace amount. You're invited back. Thanks, Drew. Do you plan on moving into different parts other than chocolate? I think my love is kind of in the snacking world, in the world where people are kind of grazing and consuming things at their leisure and enjoying foods. So one day, maybe. Also maybe into the world of candy. We actually started in lollipops of all things, and they didn't work out too well. So then I switched to chocolate really quick. So maybe one day I will go back to candy if we're looking to expand. What's the most rewarding aspect of advocating for fair trade? Thanks, John, for your question. I would say the most rewarding thing is this realization that, quite humbly, we are part of a much larger movement, all of us. Fair trade is really, it's a way of doing business, but it's also a way of, rethinking the way that we consume and the way that we create relationships with other people around the world. So, I would say the most rewarding thing about being a fair trade advocate is this realization that it's all connected in so many other ways, and you're a part of that. Oh my gosh, hi, Anne Francis. Have you considered individually wrapped options? Yes, and it's not best for the environment. Yes, you're right about that. So we've also been looking at eco-friendly packaging. Stay tuned. And individually wrapped options, yes, we're looking actually at a smaller size of a package too. So that it's more accessible to share like events or with wider groups of people. So stay tuned and fingers crossed on that. Elizabeth, lots of fair trade products must sell through Amazon. What do you think of that? Ooh, that is a loaded question. I don't think we can answer that in 13 minutes, but I think that's such an important question. It's so hard to tell, right? Like, in a lot of ways, like Walmart is said to be one of the largest sellers of fair trade products simply because of their size, right? Not because of their commitment to fair trade necessarily, but because of their size. And I think, if we had some data on Amazon, I would argue they're also like the #1 seller of, other kind of eco or socially friendly products. So, it's a tough question. I think I'm excited to see that consumers care enough that they are buying things and things like that are accessible to them on other channels. I think it comes with a lot of problems, as we know. So it's tough. I think, the more we know, the better. So we need to continue educating consumers about, making good choices, and then also making good choices about where you're spending that money, not just on what. Really fair question. Jen, how do you navigate when companies say they have ethical and sustainable standards, but as a consumer don't know if they're living up to their word or if it's just a form of greenwashing? Jen, really good question. I would say that when a company is truly doing good, they have nothing to hide and they're able to share that quite easily and quite simply. So if they're making a claim, look it up. Yeah, I would say that's probably the best way to do it. Like just do a lot of research online. That's not the purest way of doing it, but yeah, the more you know about a company, the better. So just do a lot of research. Yes, Rachel, I'm sick of talking, so I want to hear your plug. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, Ben. Great to
Rachel.
see you. Thanks for your great presentation, as always. Yeah, the folks at Fairtrade Philadelphia have been really interested in your products and the work that you're doing. So we're looking into putting together a buying club. And for those of you who don't know Fairtrade Philadelphia and the work we do, we use the buying club to be able to bring more fair trade products to the greater Philadelphia region, to pass along possible discounts to encourage the sale of fair trade products, and to also support artisans and farmers globally. So we'll be sending some information out through the Fairtrade Philadelphia newsletter at some point, gauging interest in those who would want to join us for a bulk purchase from 5 North Chocolate. And as I said before, it's really delicious. So we hope you'll join us.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Rachel.
Great.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. And thanks everybody for the questions. It seems there are no further questions. If anybody wants to mute and ask Ben something directly, you're more than welcome to do that. And also, as a part of our closing for today, we would like to pass along some announcements. The Media Fair Trade Committee, as probably all campaigns around the country, we're looking actively for volunteers. So if you are hoping to spend some time advocating for fair trade or learning more about fair trade, we will welcome you. And we are a very fun group of people to be around, and we meet 2 times a month. So let us know. You can go into our website, it's mediafairtrade.org. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, just as Rachel said. We also send monthly newsletters with information and with events and resources and news for you to stay up to date. I like your cat, Zoya. I guess that's about it. I don't know if we have any other announcements from the Media Fair Trade Committee or from anybody else. Other than that, all what is left is to say thank you to Ben. Your presentation was fantastic. It's a pleasure to be around with you, virtually speaking this time. But we can't wait to see you in media and visiting and taking that photo.
I have a question.
Yes, Drew, go ahead.
Ben, how good are you at juggling 5 North packages?
That's a really fair question, Drew.
That's a good one.
And it's funny you say, I have definitely done it. It's not the most ergonomical just because they're like uneven.
That's hard. That's
you know,
it's
it's
next
pretty
level.
tough.
I think I can do it.
It's funny there's a phrase called gentleman's juggling, and it basically means that you're someone who can go into a room and pick up anything and juggle it. So that would be a form of that, I guess. Yeah, I'd have to practice that.
That's great. No, I just was wondering, thinking about that, and with the new packaging too. I mean,
right.
This is just one of the things you may want to consider.
I have to think about juggleability of the package itself. So I'll be designing it completely around that.
All right. Well, I have a vision in my head of you juggling them in front of the media sign.
Oh my gosh.
Next time
yes.
you get around.
Yes.
You know,
that's
the
great.
invitation's open, and
Okay.
maybe we'll visit the Philadelphia Buying Club.
Deal. Well, I kind of set myself up for that after I was juggling pints of ice cream. So yeah, I should probably be able to do that. No problem.
Okay.
Yeah, people will want you in Vermont too if you can juggle Ben and Jerry's
Yeah.
ice cream at any time.
The hardest part is
I think a couple cocoa pods would probably be.
That's a great idea too. That would be really on brand for me.
Good stuff. That's good stuff.
Thanks, Drew.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Ben, and good luck. I read probably most of the people here who have been following you in Facebook and in Instagram or in the other networks know that you are heading into a new job too. That was amazing news. Ben is going to be the manager of executive communication for Fairtrade USA. So that is a big, big career movement. So we all wish you the best. Send us good vibe from there to all of us campaigners, and anybody who would like to start a campaign or check in with media for inspiration, knowledge, or tips, or just to say hi.
Thanks, Mariana.
Please. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, everyone. Please feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. The meeting will be recorded and will be sent to anybody who wants. You can email us. You'll find our email address in our website. Thank you, everybody, for participating.